Three minds that control your life. You do not have one mind. You have several systems competing to decide what happens next. One wants comfort, another wants control. And somewhere beneath both of them is a quieter form of intelligence that can see what the others cannot. Most people spend their entire lives moving between these forces without realizing it. They call themselves lazy when comfort wins. They call themselves anxious when thought takes over. They call themselves disciplined when they manage to suppress both. But suppression is not self-mastery. It is only another form of conflict. Real self-mastery begins when you understand that the goal is not to destroy any part of yourself. It is to put each part in its proper place. Imagine that your mind is a small kingdom. At the bottom is a powerful animal. Above it stands a clever advisor. And on the throne sits a ruler who is rarely present. When the throne is empty, the animal follows whatever feels good now. The advisor creates explanations for whatever has already happened. And the kingdom slowly becomes chaotic. This is the hidden structure behind many of your daily struggles. You decide to wake up early. The alarm rings. One part of you remembers the plan. Another part feels the warmth of the bed. Then a third voice appears. It does not simply say, "Go back to sleep." It says, "You need the rest. Today is unusually demanding. Starting tomorrow would make more sense." The first impulse came from the body. The justification came from the intellect. And because no one was sitting on the throne, the decision was made for you. This is the first mind, the animal mind. It is the oldest layer of your psychological life. It seeks food, safety, pleasure, status, belonging, and relief from discomfort. It pulls your hand toward the phone when silence becomes unpleasant. It encourages you to avoid the difficult conversation. It makes immediate rewards feel more important than distant consequences. But the animal mind is not broken. Without it, you would have no hunger, ambition, attraction, anger, excitement, or instinct for survival. It is the fire inside the kingdom. Fire can warm a home. It can also burn the home down. The problem is not that the fire exists. The problem is that fire cannot choose where it should spread. This is why trying to eliminate desire rarely works. When people declare war on their impulses, they often become trapped in a cycle of control and collapse. They follow an extreme routine. They deny every comfort. They force themselves forward. For a while, they feel powerful. Then the pressure becomes too great. The animal mind rebels. The diet collapses. The routine disappears. The old habit returns with even greater force. They conclude that they lack discipline. But something else happened. They tried to rule themselves through violence. An animal that is constantly beaten does not become loyal. It becomes fearful, exhausted, or unpredictable. Your instincts must be trained, not hated. Their energy has to be directed towards something larger than immediate relief. But this is where the second mind enters, the intellectual mind. The intellectual mind plans, compares, predicts, labels, remembers, and creates meaning. It allows you to imagine a future that does not yet exist. It can look at a staircase and understand that every step leads somewhere. Without this mind, long-term discipline would be impossible. Yet the intellect has a weakness. It can mistake thinking for progress. You can spend hours planning a new life without changing a single hour of your actual day. You can study discipline while continuing to avoid difficult work. You can analyze your childhood, name every pattern, identify every fear, and still remain exactly where you are. Because understanding a door is not the same as walking through it. The intellectual mind loves preparation because preparation feels safe. Action produces uncertain results. Thought can remain perfect. Reality cannot. This is why intelligent people are not always decisive. Their minds can generate 10 possible outcomes, 12 possible problems, and several convincing reasons to delay. What appears to be careful thinking may actually be fear wearing glasses. And here is what makes the intellect especially powerful. It does not merely serve truth. It also serves identity. Once you believe that you are a certain kind of person, the mind begins protecting that image. If you believe you are unlucky, it collects evidence of disappointment. If you believe people cannot be trusted, it notices betrayal and overlooks loyalty. If you believe you work best under pressure, It turns procrastination into a personality trait. The intellect becomes a lawyer. It does not always ask what is true. It asks what argument will protect the person you already believe yourself to be. This explains why change can feel threatening even when the change is good. A familiar weakness may be painful, but it is still familiar. A new identity creates uncertainty. The mind would often rather remain inside a known prison than walk into an unfamiliar landscape. So the animal seeks comfort. The intellect protects identity. And between them, your future is quietly negotiated. This brings us to the third mind. It is often called the higher self, but that phrase can be misleading. It sounds like a perfect version of you waiting somewhere in the future, calm, productive, fearless, and permanently certain. That person does not exist. The higher self is not a flawless personality. It is the capacity to observe your impulses and thoughts without immediately obeying them. It is the space between the urge and the action, the moment in which anger is present, but anger is not in control. Fear is speaking, but fear is not making the decision. A thought appears, but you recognize that a thought is an event in the mind, not an order from reality. This observing capacity is quieter than impulse and less persuasive than thought. That is why it is often missed. The animal shouts, the intellect explains. Awareness simply notices. But noticing changes the entire structure. Imagine standing at a crossroads. One path offers immediate comfort. The other leads toward the person you are trying to become. The animal points toward comfort. The intellect begins listing reasons why comfort may be reasonable. Awareness does something different. It steps back far enough to see both roads. That distance is the beginning of freedom. Not complete freedom. You will still feel temptation. You will still experience fear. You will still make irrational decisions. But you are no longer completely fused with what you feel. You can carry an impulse without allowing it to choose your direction. This is what self-mastery actually looks like. Not a silent mind, not a defeated body, not permanent peace, leadership. The higher self leads, the intellect advises, the animal provides energy. Each has a role. Consider anger. The animal mind produces the heat. The intellect explains why the anger is justified. Awareness asks what the anger is protecting. Perhaps a boundary was crossed. Perhaps pride was injured. Perhaps an old wound was touched. Once awareness sees the source, the intellect can choose language, and the animal's energy can be used to take clear action. Without awareness, anger becomes destruction. Without the animal, there is no force. Without the intellect, there is no strategy. Integration is more powerful than suppression. The same pattern applies to discipline. Suppose you want to exercise and the animal mind resists the discomfort. The intellectual mind imagines the benefits but may also produce excuses. Awareness recognizes both reactions and asks a better question. What action would preserve trust with myself? That question matters because every repeated action becomes evidence. Each time you make a promise and abandon it, you teach your mind that your intentions are temporary. Each time you follow through, even in a small way, you place another stone in a bridge between who you are and who you intend to become. This is why small acts of discipline often matter more than dramatic ones. A freezing shower may feel heroic. A brutal workout may create a temporary sense of power, but the deeper training is much less theatrical. It is closing the application when you said you would work. It is pausing before replying in anger. It is getting out of bed when no one is watching. It is doing the ordinary action that keeps the inner hierarchy intact. The ruler returns to the throne through repetition, not intensity. This also changes how you should approach uncomfortable practices. Discomfort is useful, but only when it teaches conscious choice. Pain by itself does not produce wisdom. You can suffer and learn nothing. The purpose of voluntary discomfort is not to prove that you are tougher than your body. It is to discover that an unpleasant sensation can be present without controlling your behavior. You do not need to punish the animal mind. You need to show it that discomfort is survivable. This is how the nervous system gradually learns safety in situations it once tried to avoid. The difficult task becomes less threatening. Silence becomes less uncomfortable. Uncertainty becomes something you can carry. And there is another reason this matters. Most destructive habits are not really attempts to gain pleasure. They are attempts to escape a feeling. The phone escapes boredom. Overthinking escapes uncertainty. Procrastination escapes the possibility of failure. Anger escapes vulnerability. Constant productivity may even become a way to escape stillness. When you only attack the habit, you miss the emotion beneath it. The animal mind is often not asking for pleasure. It is asking for relief. Awareness lets you hear that request without automatically granting it. You can sit with the urge long enough to ask, what am I trying not to feel? That question turns a battle into an investigation, and sometimes the answer is uncomfortable. You may discover that your lack of discipline is actually a lack of direction. You are not resisting effort. You are resisting a life that no longer feels meaningful. You may discover that your endless planning protects you from being judged. As long as the project remains unfinished, its quality can never be tested. You may discover that your anger toward another person hides disappointment in yourself. This is why awareness can feel threatening. It does not always tell you what you want to hear. It removes the stories that allowed you to remain unchanged. But awareness alone is not enough. Eventually, truth must become behavior. A person can become very skilled at observing their patterns while continuing to repeat them. They notice the impulse. They understand the childhood wound. They describe the defense mechanism. Then they do exactly what they always do. Observation opens the door. Action walks through it. A practical system for training these three minds does not need to be complicated. In the morning, create one moment in which you choose direction before consuming stimulation. Before messages, news, or social media, ask, what deserves to lead me today? Choose one difficult action that matters, not 10. 1. This gives the intellect a clear direction and teaches the animal that discomfort will not determine the day. During the day, notice the moments when you begin negotiating with yourself. The negotiation is often more important than the excuse. It reveals that one part of you has made a decision and another part is trying to reverse it. Pause. Name what is happening. Comfort is asking for control. Fear is producing an argument. Pride is protecting an image. Naming creates distance. Distance creates choice. At night, do not simply ask whether the day was successful. Ask who was leading. When did impulse take control? When did thought create confusion? When did awareness interrupt an old pattern? Do not use the answers to judge yourself. Use them to study the kingdom. A ruler who refuses accurate information cannot lead for long. Over time, something subtle begins to change. You stop measuring progress only by outcomes. You begin measuring it by alignment. You may still feel afraid, but act honestly. You may still want comfort, but keep the promise. You may still hear the old story, but refuse to build another day around it. This is how identity changes. Not through declarations, through accumulated evidence. The future self is not created by imagining a different person. It is created when your present actions repeatedly vote for a different identity. Eventually, discipline feels less like force. It becomes loyalty. You are no longer dragging yourself toward an ideal. You are protecting a relationship with yourself. And perhaps this is the most important part of the entire framework. The higher self is not above the animal and the intellect because it is more pure. It is higher because it can hold both without becoming either. It can feel desire without being enslaved by desire. It can use thought without becoming trapped inside thought. It can experience fear while still moving with purpose. You do not become whole by cutting away the parts of yourself that create difficulty. You become whole by giving them wise leadership. The animal was never the enemy. The intellect was never the enemy. The real danger was the empty throne. And every conscious decision, however small, is an act of returning to it.